Quick disclaimer. This is my first time producing pre-recorded content, so I apologize if it isn't great. In July of 2022, I posted this image to r/model trains on Reddit to much positive reception. Among the comments were numerous requests for close-ups and a video, which I promised both. My good friend Firefox Origins helped me with the photography for this project, and real-life chaos on his end is the primary source of the delays. We both apologize for the delay and hope you will enjoy the final product. He streams over on Twitch, link in the description. The footage you are seeing is out of date since it was taken in July, and as of editing, it is now October. As such, I've had a few new arrivals that don't show up in the footage. The majority of the close-ups were also taken by him, with a few that we forgot at the time to get a side shot of, and the new arrivals filled out by me with my phone. Comments were made about the variety exhibited in my collection, so I will answer my collection rules. I like weird or unusual things, with the rest of the collection representing either a themed set or favorites from a particular line or railway. In the lineup and video footage, they are lined up divided by Big Four, LNER, LMS, etc., BR, Miscellaneous American, then Union Pacific. With that out of the way, let's get started. Kicking off is my one and only narrow gauge 009 scale locomotive, the Fastidiog Small England. This is the number 2 engine, Prince. Cute and an amazing model all at once. Starting with the southern engines, we begin with two SECRP class tank engines. One is in the SECR green, the other in ROD green. These are fabulous runners with so much detail for a reasonable price. The LSWR 415 class, also known as the Adams Radial Tank, is next. This guy was produced by Oxford Rail. Great detail and accuracy, but they could have selected a better motor. Next up is the Hornby M7, presented here as the example owned by the British National Collection in LSWR mint and chocolate. I love this livery. It looks like it popped out of a Willy Wonka movie. This is Stepney. Had a hard time finding this guy, so when it came up on Rails of Sheffield eBay page, I jumped on it. The previous owner DCC fitted it and programmed with realistic in-scale acceleration, deceleration, and top speed. So it runs in scale the way the real engine would. Very cool. Probably the oldest model in my collection, the Hornby E2. It does capture the class quite nicely, but has a plasticky finish. I really wish somebody would produce a model of the E2 to modern standards. Fun fact, the tooling for these was modified to make the Hornby Thomas. One of my favorite tank engines is next, the LVSC E4. A beautiful livery with realistic finish across the board, even on small details like the Westinghouse pump. Up next is my only southern locomotive that isn't a tank engine, the Battle of Britain class 92nd Squadron. This is an early 2000s release with an articulating truck at the rear. I really do understand why many consider the early 2000s to be Hornby's golden age. With great performance and quality, this guy was a bargain for $100. I love the malachite livery on the air smooth casing, such a striking engine. On to the Great Western, we have a 5700 Pannier. This guy was a random kit build I got for cheap from Hatton's. A powerful polar with a metal body but janky pickups. The Bachmann Panniers are so much better in that regard. A really famous one next, City of Truro, sadly missing a buffer from a factory defect. Still a gorgeous one, with one of the best liveries in my fleet, and an opening smokebox door. My third and last Great Western engine, the King class King Edward II. This was one of the best bargains in my fleet, for just over 110 from a sale at the Model Center. Great performance and detail to match, with an intricate cab and valve gear to be seen under the boiler. I do plan on adding a few more Great Western engines to the fleet. I have an Acura Scale Manor class on pre-order and plan on picking up Lord of the Isles and a few more tank engines next year. Onto the LMS, we have the 1980s release of the Fowler 4P. He is fairly reliable, but noisy and outdated. I hope to get the 2000s version of this at some point. From suburban tank engines to an Express Pacific, here's the Princess Royal class Princess Victoria. In my opinion, this is where Hornby started to nail it with the finish. The detail is spectacular, with probably the best performance out of any Hornby model in my fleet. Hope to get a BR Blue one at some point. One of my favorite classes of steam locomotive of all time is next, the Princess Coronation. I have here a streamlined example and an unstreamlined example. Both have molded coal rams that can be seen by removing their coal loads, and the specific unstreamlined one I went for depicts the class pre-rebuild, with the sloped smoke box and gap in the running plate. I hope to get a rebuilt one at some point. Kicking off the LNER, we have a recent acquisition, the D16 Claude Hamilton. A similar search to Stepney took place with this one until I found it for its original recommended retail price on Clark Railworks. Unlike Stepney, this one had been unopened. I had to oil the bearings because it had dried out on the shelf. A bit of oil made a great runner. Next up in line is the preserved Great Northern C1 Atlantic, a beautiful release from Bachmann, sporting, in my opinion, a superior livery to the classic LNER green, which features light brown frames with red lining. Like City of Truro, this one also has an opening smokebox door. I have 3 A1s and or A3s that are kept as main collection pieces. I have the Hornby Railroad Flying Scotsman, which I chose not to show due to damaged valve gear. My fault on that. The first of the two I'm showing is Doncaster in original A1 condition. This is the new Hornby release with a metal running plate and the best firebox feature I have ever seen. The second is the 2013 release of the USA Tour Scotsman, complete with the second tender, bell, cowcatcher, and a chime whistle. Just like the D16, this was mint unopened, so I had to oil it for best performance. Funny thing, this guy runs better than Doncaster. Did I overpay for this one? Yes. Do I regret it? No. Up next is easily the most unique model in my fleet, the LNER W1 Hush Hush. I love this thing mainly for how one of a kind it is. Everything is unique, from the shape to the livery to the cab detail. He's a fabulous runner too, up there with the Princess Royal in terms of performance. I have 6 A4s, for a couple of reasons. I am trying to rack up all the preserved ones, and I wanted Silverlink. The first I will show is Silverlink. He has a funny story from his first run, which another guy did a fantastic video on, link in the description. Next is Mallard, specifically the NRM glossy finish one. I both love and hate the glossy finish. I love it because it looks just like the real engine in the photos. I hate it because photographing it is a total pain. Get the lighting wrong and you get nothing but glare. Next is Bittern, the 1-to-1 collection model that comes with the second tender. The finish on this guy is lovely, and he has the best performance of any of my A4s. Next is Dominion of Canada, who is in the process of getting a new chassis. The original one arrived damaged in transit, and I could not fix it. He is sadly also missing his bell. Next is Dwight Eisenhower. This guy is special because I have seen the real engine. Last of my A4s, I have Sir Nigel Gresley, presented in a slightly out-of-date BR Blue. I have nailed down Union of South Africa to complete the set. It is currently sitting in my Hatton's trunk, waiting for a bulk order to build up. Seriously, the Hatton's trunk service is amazing for those of us that want British stock but live in the US. On to my 2 BR built locomotives. First is my newest model, the newly released Hornby Evening Star. I cannot sing the praises of this model highly enough. Great runner, insane detail, flawless assembly, no glue marks anywhere, and totally sturdy. And has the same firebox feature as the previously shown A1 Doncaster. My last main collection British locomotive to show is the Class 55 Deltic from the Cura scale. While the 9F gave a fantastic product that should be expected at the price point, I feel like I did not pay enough for the Deltic. This thing opened my eyes to how much detail there is to model on a British diesel, while also displaying top-notch performance. Seriously, this engine holds every coach I own without struggling. Before we move on to the American engines, I have a few custom Thomas characters to show. These were inspired by the Unlucky Tug's custom fleet. I will link to his playlist in the description. Showing them in the order made, I'll start with Gordon. He is simply a repainted Hornby A3. This being the first one I made, I tried painting on the lining with a paint at the end of a toothpick. Okay for a first try, but not great. Next is Arthur. I made the LMS tone paint by mixing the red from Blake with a medium gray. The lining was made by taking a gold-black gold lining from Fox Transfers and applying black paint to the outside layer of gold with a toothpick post-application. The lettering was done with gold paint on a toothpick, and the numbers are from an LMS number sheet I got from Hatton's. I want to redo one someday because I got impatient with the primer, which resulted in a lumpy finish. Next, my last one currently complete is James. He is the same as Tug's James, but with a Hornby 4F instead of the Bachmann J11 because I wanted model series proportions. I think the locomotive turned out great, but my lining on the tender is a bit sloppy. I have 2 in progress and 2 untouched. First we have Salty, made with a Helgen Class 07. I need to smooth out the paint job, then I need the number transfers, which I cannot find for some reason. Then I have Donald with the main coat down. Needs touch up to the running plate and lining, then he'll be done. I have a second 812 that will be Douglas, and a Hornby 1400 auto tank that will be Oliver as soon as I get the number plates. Kicking off the American engines, we have Jupiter. I find this guy hilarious, because it was a birthday gift from my brother who said it was a $50 eBay find. This is the hilarious part. $50 eBay engine crawls better than most of my $200 plus models. Looks great too. Thanks, bro. Next is a lifelike GP38, which was a Christmas gift from a friend. Originally had broken gears, but I was eventually able to find a replacement buggy and get him running. Noisy, but consistent. Thanks, man. Next is the J1E Hudson from Broadway Limited Imports, found at a train show. Superb runner with great detail, but fiddly to get running and has an outdated sound system. Now we have the NYC Dreyfus Hudson from Riverosi, which I found at my locally owned hobby shop. Good runner, but dated tooling. Here's the first locomotive I ever bought, a 1970s Lionel HOGS4 in the daylight scheme. Despite its age, it is still a decent runner that looks great. I'll hang on to him for the rest of my days. Up next is a 1980s release of the Bachmann Norfolk and Western Class J. Not the best runner, and many of the decals have rubbed off. I have a modern one on pre-order. Next is a Riverosi Y6B, presented in ATSF livery as if on loan. Also want to get a modern model of this class at some point. Until then, this guy's noisy but consistent. On to my 3 Union Pacific engines with the MTH 9000 class. I love this engine for everything from the metal construction to the working Gresley valve gear to the unusual wheel arrangement to the top-notch performance and sound system. Next is the Challenger from Athearn. The articulation on this thing blows me away. Pivoting yet sturdy pipework allows for the movement of the front chassis. I honestly didn't know that Athearn had made early Challengers until I found this guy on eBay. I must add that this engine is the most eerie, ghostly whistle that I have ever heard. And the grand finale, my Athearn Genesis Union Pacific Big Boy. This thing is amazing in every way, from intricate yet sturdy detailing to top-of-the-industry performance. Word of advice, if you do the Sam's Train style torque test with this beast on track that is not pinned down, it will either shove your hand out of the way or push the track back. It also has more pulling power than I can test for on my tiny setup. Hope to get him sound fitted at some point. And that is the collection. It will continue to grow as time goes on, both as I find other classes that I want or pre-orders get filled. I know the Hornby Original Merchant Navy in Southern Malachite is releasing soon, so that will be the next one I get. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.